Hello and welcome to part 3 of our comedic cue. What I need to do now is get all these instruments bounced out and organised into stems, and then we're going to master it. This time I will use plugins on the mastering chain instead of the Logic Mastering Assistant, so you can see a different way of approaching that. But first off, there's a comment from regular friend of the channel, Jim, who after the last video, apart from saying, why hasn't everybody subscribed to the channel and click that button? Okay, he didn't say that. What he did say was, loving the cue, B section suggestion, slide whistle, duck call, siren whistle, or some other whimsical element that's unexpected. Just a thought as I listened to the outro. Well, good idea, Jim. I think I'm going to go back and do that first and try and come up with something extra for this middle section here, because it is a bit sparse. You've got to be careful when you're doing library music not to do anything too diegetic. So thunderclaps, rain, they're all out. That's the job of a Foley artist, to put those things in, because if you have a lovely thunderclap but the scene it's over, it isn't raining, you're going to have a problem. It could just rule your cue out of the running straight away. So I'm going to go and look for some sounds to fill up in here. See you in a bit. Okay, we've got some more interesting elements in here now. There is some orchestral percussion now. Along with a mandolin. And I was trying to play around with slide whistle, as Jim suggested. The trouble is, you've got to be careful it doesn't become too Halloween sounding with that sort of sound. I've ended up with this sound. It's quite subtle in the background. All together. I think that really makes that middle section a lot more interesting now, other than, you know, we just had a repeating pattern before. So nice suggestion, Jim, and we can carry on with putting our track together. First thing I'm going to do is literally go through, color code everything, and remember I'm unhiding the stems and I need to put in reverb tracks as well. Let me organise the instruments first, colour code into 6 groups. I think I might need more this time because of the number of elements going on. We'll see how that turns out in a second. There we go. We've got everything labelled up and colour coded. I've ended up with 8 different groups of instruments, so 6 stems is not going to be enough. Remember, stems are just audio tracks. So we're going to add 2 of those. They're going to be stem 7, stem 8. We want the inputs to be the next ones along. So 27 and 28. They're going to the stereo out, which is correct at the moment. What we now need to do is create our reverb tracks, and we're going to do that by going create an auxiliary track. For the time being, I'm going to call it reverb 1. The input, let's start it on 31. So 31, 32, 30, up to 38 will be our reverbs. They are not going to go to the stereo out. They're going to go to the correct stem. So reverb 1 goes to stem 1, which in this case 31 goes to 21. It's a nice easy way, I find, to keep things organised. I also, once I've put in these extra tracks, I'm then going to route all the instruments that I've colour coded. For example, the piano's on its own, but the strings, they will all need to be routed to, and I do it sequentially from top to bottom. So these will be going into stem, that'll be stem 1, that'll be stem 2, those will be stem 3. All of those will need to go to stem 3 which I can then call stem strings. The other thing to do when you have set up the reverb is to create a track so you can see what's going on as well. Okay, see you when I've finished setting that up. So I didn't need headphones for that bit. It was a lot of pointing and clicking and making sure everything goes to the right place. I've put a default Air Studios reverb on each of the reverb tracks, so it's ready to go. We've got all the buses going to the right place. Now, before I start feeding the instruments into the stems and also into any reverb I want, which will also feed into the stem, what I need to do is go through and EQ all of the tracks. So what I'll do is I will be soloing each one and doing any EQ that I want to apply. I will also do any automation of volume in the instrument section. Say for example, the strings stem is going to consist of 4 different instruments. Automating the stem is not going to work as well as obviously automating the individual instruments. So any automation I will do now before we pass it into the stem and the reverbs. Okay, so EQ time. Right, so we now have all the instruments going to their correct buses. So from bus 21 to 28. We've got all the reverbs being sent out as well, which then combine to come back into each of the stems. I've got them all on input monitoring so I can hear what's going on. If these are all turned off, I should hear nothing, even at the end when most things are in. Put input monitoring on. Everything comes through. So we put them all into record. Go back to the beginning and hit the record button. See when that's finished. And there we go. 8 stems ready to go, and we can mix and match them as we like. We can mute all the instruments because now we're only interested in playing back stems. So we need to do a little bit of mastering to get things up to full volume. Bear in mind, by adding reverb, we increased the overall level. So you've got to make sure you've still got room to do mastering at this point. Another little hint is, as you can see, these are hard to see the names of these. Here's a little trick for you. If you do configure channel strip components, and under track name, you can change it to 2 or 3 lines so you can actually see what's going on. How am I going to master this? Well, one way is to just let the Logic Mastering Assistant do it for you. The other way is to do it yourself. So I would use an exciter. And around that 2000 Hertz is normally a good place to boost. Then I would add a very small amount of reverb. I would probably use something like chroma verb. A little bit there. Then I would use a stereo spreader. And what I would do here is not affect the lowest frequencies, just want to do it a little bit on the higher frequencies. Something like that. So if I turn it on and off, gives it a nice little bit of width. Then I would use a multi-presser. And I tend to find that some of these default options are pretty good. And finally, an adaptive limiter. We'll set this to -1 And we'll have a look at the gain. We shouldn't be pushing this gain too hard to get our peak to -1. So don't forget to check the quieter moments as well. Okay, there you have it. A comedic cue, all nicely stemmed out so we can give our music library exactly what they want. I will play this through for you now, but I will also come back and play it again with the Logic Mastering Assistant to see if that makes any difference. So let's hear this one through first, then I'll put on Mastering Assistant. Okay, let's see what happens if I turn all these off, and then what I'm going to do is let Mastering Assistant analyze it and see what it comes up with. There's Mastering Assistant's analysis. It's boosting quite a bit of low end and scooping out some of those mids, so this is going to sound different to my version. Let's listen to it and see you in the next video.